Hello, respected judges and panel members. My name is Jin Chang from University Malaysia Sabah, and I would like to present our innovation project entitled Reimagining Language Assessment, a learning-centered Korean mock test model.
From Test to Learning is an educational innovation project aimed at changing the traditional assessment methods used in assessing beginners in the Korean language to a learning-focused, diagnostic, and supportive assessment model. The traditional mock-written exams are often merely a tool of gauging the performance of the learner at a given point in time. Although such tests are useful in the evaluation of the basic knowledge, they do not give much feedback, and most importantly, they do not actively help the learners in understanding their mistakes or in improving their language skills. This project redefines assessment as a part and parcel of learning process where evaluation is not only a measure of achievement but is also used to push learners towards a better direction. The suggested model is grounded and based on social science and educational values, underpinning the concepts of equity, confidence of the learner, and inclusive assessment activities.
Even though mock-written tests on novice learners of the Korean language play an important role in determining competency in the foundational stages of language acquisition, there are significant shortcomings in contemporary assessment procedures, especially in as far as they are useful in supporting learner acquisition. Originally, evaluations in the modern world are predominantly used to supply outcome measures, which determine whether responses are right or wrong, but do not give enough explanatory or diagnostic information. Learners are therefore often not in a position to identify the root causes of their mistakes or understand how this can be improved. Second, the assessment of vocabulary is often carried out in a decontextualized form, where the emphasis is put on recognition and not on application. The method is detrimental to the transfer of lexical knowledge by the learners to real communicative situations, hence undermining their functional language competence. Third, assessment forms tend to be standardized and similar, which provide minimal attention to the differences of particular learners. These methodologies ignore differences in the pace of learning, language proficiency, and cognitive maturity, hence eliminating the possibility of individualized learning support. Lastly, repetitive exposure of evaluation with no substantial advice is potentially developing a loss of confidence in learners, especially beginners. The fear of the mistake and the performance anxiety are able to demoralize active involvement and suppress the desire to speak the language outside the testing context.
This project has the following objectives. A. Transform traditional Korean imitated written examination into a learning model assessment. B. Provide diagnostic and structured feedback to help the learners determine specific areas of weakness. C. Encourage contextual understanding of words and sentence structure and not memorization. D. Create a culture of fair and inclusive evaluation, which will reduce the apprehension of learners and lead to confidence. The assessment model focuses on an evaluation form of feedback-oriented approach, which goes beyond just the presentation of numerical scores as the sole measure of learner performance. As opposed to using quantitative outcomes as the only outcome measure, the model has the ability to include the element of qualitative feedback to enable the substantive interpretation of the assessment outcomes. In this context, the learners are given clear explanations of the wrong answers, and common patterns of errors are identified in a systematic manner. Moreover, the assessment also outlines certain areas of language that require further strengthening, thus, giving learners the power to identify not only solitary mistakes but also areas of where they have a weakness in their language acquisition. This method will encourage learners to be more active about their performance and understand the reasons behind their mistakes by encouraging them to think extensively about the results of their assessments. In this sense, assessment is redefinition as a formative and supportive learning process, which develops awareness of learners, confidence, and continuous improvement as opposed to being an evaluative judgment. At present there are 2 native Korean speakers who are Korean language teachers in PIB-UMS. We are able to give professional criticism on their mock test scores and pinpoint their errors. Target users. A. UMS Korean language learners. The project is expected to create a redesigned Korean model of mock written assessment that can effectively be used as a learning process instead of a tool to evaluate a student. This updated model increases the pedagogical worth of assessment since it incorporates components of diagnostic and developmental testing in the test structure. Also, the project will provide full diagnostic feedbacks of the learners, with the provision of systematic post-assessment learning directions. These outputs will be aimed at assisting the learner in reflection, clarifying on what areas need to be improved, and offer specific guidance to the learner on the further learning activities, which will intensify the learner engagement and advancement. Moreover, the project will also offer practical implications on the instructors by determining general learner challenges and performance trends across groups. The resulting model is intended to be reusable and expandable, allowing it to be adapted to a variety of classes, academic terms, and perhaps other language conditions, and therefore be sustainable and relevant to the institution in the long term. Educationally, the project will increase the understanding of the foundational concepts of the Korean language among the learners as assessment will be reconceptualized as a supporting learning tool. The model trains active engagement of learners and confidence in using the Korean language, especially in the beginner stage, by encouraging performance reflection and targeted improvement. Concerning the social effect, the project will promote more equity and transparency in language evaluation practices. It reduces uncertainty and anxiety that are typically linked to testing, provides a clear diagnostic feedback and guided structure, and promotes inclusive educational settings that address the learning needs and abilities of various groups. In terms of sustainability, the evaluation model is designed to be used on different cohorts repeatedly, without making quality sacrifice. It also leads to the reduction of repetitive teaching responsibilities by facilitating feedback mechanisms and makes it consistent to the long-term educational development goals, thus making it relevant and adaptable to the changing instruction and learning conditions. In From Test to Learning, a change in approach to Korean language assessment is proposed by refocusing on the evaluation of the student on a duration of performance rather than on the short-term performance indicators. This method redefines assessment as part and parcel of the learning process and not a final evaluative event. The project presents how evaluation can be a positive process that helps learners to develop by registering the use of diagnostic analysis, structured post-assessment feedback, and guided learning. By doing that, assessment is placed as an empowerment process, which allows the learners to realize their improvement, deal with areas of challenge, feel more secure about working with language learning.